87, so I'm more Penangite than anything else. When I first came to Malaysia, I was so happy that, everybody, all the Muslims, Hindus, Christians, everybody, there was no such thing as, oh, you're a Muslim, you're a Christian, and we can't go to each other's houses. But then came this born-again Christianity, and I know from personal experience, friends who used to come to our house for Eid al-Fitr suddenly decided that they cannot visit a Muslim home. Now, unfortunately, it's become more like you say, Wahhabism is in Saudi Arabia. Now it's Shafiism in Malaysia. No other mazhab is accepted. Even though Malaysia has signed the fatwa, I think it was 2002, 2004, to say the four mazhabs, Sunni four mazhabs, and Jafari and the Zaidi, I think, of the Shia mazhab, are accepted religions. But unfortunately, it's not so here now. And there's a lot of anti-Shia movement going on in the last few months. Maybe it's more political, but what would you say to the government or to the people that this should not be so? When you say, Bismillah, la ilaha illallah, Muhammadan Rasulullah, you're a Muslim. Don't say, I'm this, I'm that, I'm that, I'm that. And that creates problems. What would you say to that?
Thank you so much. Very interesting and important observations. First of all, I'm not saying too much critical things until I get on the plane when it comes to government. You never know. So I have great respect for the government and its policies, but I might have tiny criticisms. And I've heard, of course, I don't know Malaysia that well, but I've been here before and I've been reading the news about Malaysia, this ban on the word Allah to Christians, which sounds very unacceptable to me. In Turkey, Christians use the word Allah. We never think that they are attacking us or insulting us. And I've written about those issues a few times. In my very uninformed, naive, primitive observation, sometimes there's maybe a problem in Malaysia and similar cases with the fusion of national identity and religious identity. What makes you a Malay is being a Muslim, which means that nationalist causes like unity of the nation, integrity of the nation, also becomes articulated through religious, injunctions and religious theorization and so on and so forth. But that doesn't sometimes serve religion, because if Islam is the fate of a certain ethnic group, how will it appeal to other groups? Because Islam is a universal religion. It's not the property of Turks or Malays or Arabs or this and that. I think it would be more healthy to distinguish a little bit. Of course, Turkish culture is defined by Islam and it's not go away and it's fine. But it's not exclusive to Turks or the Arabs. So we should be able to make it a bit more open to other cultures for the very faith itself. Secondly, in the past 2 centuries in our part of the world, Muslims have been attacked constantly, or they felt threatened constantly by Western imperialism, colonialism, cultural imperialism, this and that. This made them very defensive and sometimes reactionary. But that's a vicious cycle, because if you're that defensive and that reactionary and that protective, you cannot unleash the dynamics that will improve your well-being. You need more freedom of thought, you need more diversity, you need more free debate in order to be able to move on. That's why the West has been so successful, because of all these freedoms mainly. Creativity comes from freedom. Free thoughts, free ideas, free markets, free flow of that leads to success, that leads to new ideas, new institutions, and so on and so forth. The fact that we felt threatened made us very defensive, and it is the very thing that actually blocks us from moving forward. Therefore, in my view, for example, on all these issues of, there are missionaries, there are Christian propaganda, listen, if we are confident about our faith, why are we so threatened? If we are confident about our faith, why do we think that we will be confused if somebody utters the name of Allah? Why are not they confused, but we? I mean, is this not a? So, I think that's people's allegiance to their faith will never go and shouldn't go. I'm a Muslim and I want to see Muslims steadfast, and I would like steadfast in their faith. But that should not be confused by bigotry, closed-mindedness, parochialism, isolationism. If you're confident about our faith, we should open ourselves. We should not forget that secular thought or other faith traditions help us improve. Because by conversing with them, we develop arguments, we develop new minds, we develop a more sophisticated culture. Muslims are generally, one observation about that, Muslims are generally very proud of our medieval golden age. There was an age that Muslims were inventing many things in chemistry, mathematics, optics, medicine, philosophy. There was a time that the greatest thinkers of the world were not in Oxford or somewhere else in the US or France, but in Baghdad and Kufa and Cordoba in the Islamic world. How was that possible? Well, one reason was that those Muslims were open-minded and self-confident, and they did not shy away from studying Aristotle, Plato, and making an Islamic interpretation of that un-Islamic Greek philosophy. They did not shy away from learning from different cultures, Hindu, Greek, Jewish, and different cultures. Our very defensiveness makes us closed, inevitably closed-minded, and it blocks our progress. Therefore, I think that since we believe that we have God's final revelation, the most mature, religion, we should act like mature people, and not close them ourselves. Of course, I know many people don't think like this, but I think this should be the argument against that. And competition helps. Competition between different religions help every religion and matures its arguments and its theology and its thinking and so on and so forth. Well, there are some Muslims who say, no, we don't need all this. We will just create these closed societies. We will ban all the Western antennas, all the antennas which get Western channels. We will block the internet. It is a lost cause. The world is such a place that there is no closed space anymore. Your child will inevitably go to the internet or travel or open up a TV and see something un-Islamic. You can never protect the zone. But if you give him the values and the faith, and that should be based on not imposition, but persuasion, but education, and so on and so forth, if that person internalizes these Islamic values, it's okay. The fact that he's exposed to the world will not be a problem. Muslims who are passionate about protecting Islam make too much focus on saving ourselves, minds from the outside world. We were speaking today. Many Muslims complain, oh, look at Hollywood. Through Hollywood, there's this Western imperialism and blah, blah, blah. Why there's no Muslim Hollywood? Why don't we make better films that Americans will watch and be inspired by Islam? Why don't we put our money, all the oil money in the Gulf, to efforts like this? Al Jazeera success story. Instead of just complaining CNN, well, here's Al Jazeera, a very successful case. Why don't we do more of this rather than trying to ban CNNs, the BBCs of the world? Make our own alternatives, which will maybe even influence those societies and represent our values to those societies. So I think that's the key issue. The trick here is that the authoritarian Muslims frame this as, are you with Islam or are you with the enemies of Islam? I defend liberty because I believe in Islam, not because I have a problem with Islam. And I think that should be the argument to be made. And there are people who make these arguments. Some of them invited me to Malaysia, and we've been speaking with them. So I'm glad that there's also a movement among Muslims in Malaysia who are trying to defend these liberal values and articulate them in an Islamic framework. We're giving the same battles inside Turkey too. Little different, but.
Or you could just use that microphone. Yeah. Yes, you can.
Not yet. Yes. Good afternoon. Salam alaikum. I'm Yusuf Adepetrash. I'm lecturer in USM. I don't know if you agree with me. As I follow social political trends let's say in the past decade or 2 decades, I can feel a decrease of liberty or freedom, and an increase of surveillance, an increase in the control of society, of our way of thinking by any governments or religious leaders. I don't mean that's an Islamic issue, because I can see non-Islamic or non-Muslim countries too. This is something that Mr. Akio labeled as Middle Ages. I can see something that the Middle Ages is coming back. My question is, to put shortly, is do you see any contrary trends? Of course, you and me, and I think many of us, feel the importance of liberty for our life, for the quality of our life, for our survival. But do you see any trends anywhere in the Islamic or beyond the Islamic world which has some power, which has some followers, and some future opportunities to gain ground and put up some alternative? Thank you. Okay.
Any other questions?
So, my name is Lee. You touched on the use of the word Allah in Malaysia. Relating to now in Malaysia, what I understand, the absolute head of Islam are the sultans and the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. So, if you are thinking Malay Muslim intellectual, and certain Islamic decrees or edicts are not, you find not acceptable, or you have doubts and all that, then how or where would you advise such a Malaysian Muslim to refer to, or what recourse could he have? Or is there an international ultimate authority, like in Catholics they have the Vatican and all that? Give your comments. Thank you.
Well, thank you for both questions. Certainly, liberty is actually being threatened by governments and maybe companies through this amazing spread of technology. I mean, we are now all watched through the internet. Whatever we do, wherever we go, that's being recorded. The more this will go, you give your fingerprints to. I mean, technology has created a new threat to liberty. It's seen as technology is seen as liberating, but it's also it violates your privacy. That there's a chance that you're just sitting, walking on the road, someone can video you and put it on YouTube, and millions of people will see that. Especially privacy is violated. And of course, governments can now wiretap your phones, look at your emails, follow everything you do. That's a new way of liberty. This is not medieval, because in medieval era, there was not technology. And actually, one of the things about the medieval era was that, well, there were despotic governments, but the government would not be in your life that much. The government was not that big. There was no police force in medieval societies. If you're living in a village in the middle of nowhere, you would have no idea about what the government was. Now the government comes, takes your child, takes it to school, educates it. There's a police and judge and an eye on you. Now there are cameras in the city watching you. This is very open to be abused. On the one hand, we need these technologies to be able to communicate. Should we have cameras in cities watching? Well, on the one hand, it is watching me, and maybe I might be disturbed by that. On the other hand, there are so many thieves now, and maybe they should be watched to stop crime. So much power is at the hands of governments, and an alternative as these multinational large companies. Facebook has the greatest source of information. I mean, the biggest spying on the world is in Facebook, that everybody exposes who they are to Facebook. And that power can be used. And governments can chase you for their political reasons or so. That's why it is very important to push for transparency of all these processes. And it will never be fully transparent. There's always a power behind. But it's a new challenge with changing technology. Let's not forget that technology keeps changing the world. Our perceptions about the world. Nation states emerged when city-states collapsed because of cannons and other technological advances, which made small states impossible, and travel and trains and so on made it accessible. If there's beaming technology in the world, like with speed of light, all nation states will probably disappear, because you'll have a home in Penang and your work office will be in New York, and you'll have tea in London for something. So in that sense, technology brings new assets and new troubles, and that is one of them. So that it's a different thing. It's medieval, and medieval, by the way, is not always a bad thing. I mean, there's wisdom in medieval thinking. When it comes to issues with women, especially though most medieval societies were misogynist to an extent, because women were not seen simply equal with men, because all jobs were manual jobs. And men were apparently better at being a knight and a soldier and so on and so forth. As technology improved, now we see that women can be better writers and directors and this and that, this and that. So technology changed the mindset with regards to those concepts as well. I don't know, does this answer your question? No? No, okay.